Hello, my name is James. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Estimated time of departure showcases some of the best parts about the show as well as some of the worst. Manifest has worked hard this season to have cliffhangers that leave us wanting more. While Saanvi's therapy arc and the expiration dates showcase the series still has mysteries we want to unravel, the closing gunshot, as well as Grace's pregnancy, feels a little over the top. Especially when that final scene requires Jared to act extremely out of character to get him into a fight. The finale tries really hard to make it seem like Zeke could slip back into his addiction and become a villain. From the opening scene, we see him struggling to leave a liquor store but eventually succumb to buying a bottle. When he returns to Michael's apartment, he spends most of the time pacing around it. Eventually, he goes to grab a drink but she arrives home early. Zeke shoves it into the couch and doesn't tell her what happened. Instead, the two focus on the latest calling, Stop Him. All of the main characters heard it and have the same theory. Griffin was released from jail and he immediately books a television interview to reveal the callings. Not to mention, Cal is sent into a rage about his own drawing but he refuses to show anyone but Zeke. Zeke will do anything for a distraction because it turns out his potential relapse is coming on the heels of a visit to his mother. It's a shame Manifest doesn't actually let us see that reunion because it requires the viewer to imagine what happened. Apparently, she slammed the door in his face rather than attempt to reconnect. Michaela tries to offer him sympathy but he rejects it. He doesn't think he deserves it because he's not a good guy. Michaela already knows his history though, even before Jared decided to hand her his police file thanks to his actions from last week. Naturally, she's upset that he explicitly ignored her request again to leave Zeke alone. When she questions whether he's doing it because of his heart, not his head, Jared angrily disagrees. Nothing like some well-placed defensiveness to show you're making a rational choice. He relents and asks if there's anything going on between her and Zeke, which Michaela once again denies. Nevertheless, she does bring up Zeke's past when they're at her apartment. Instead of clamming up, he's more than willing to answer any questions. As he points out, this is her apartment and she deserves to know who's staying there. Michaela lets him know that she doesn't care and the two hug with a very weird vibe. Based on the awkwardness afterward and the post-finale interview with Entertainment Weekly, Manifest will definitely have a love triangle to deal with in Season 2. Nevertheless, the two don't have time to linger on the situation. Zeke heads to Ben's so he can talk to Cal about what's about to come. Cal forces him to promise he won't tell his father or Michaela about what he's about to show him. In his sketchbook, Cal has his, Ben's and Michaela's headstones all drawn. Suddenly, the clock is ticking for the group to save the next calling. A man of his word, Zeke doesn't tell the others what Cal has shown him. The Stone family wants to try talking to Griffin again because they do need to stop him. However, Zeke thinks that not stopping Griffin will result in Michaela's death so he storms out. Unfortunately, Jared has paid a fellow cop to tail him throughout the city. The cop gets photos of what looks like Zeke participating in a drug deal and sends them to Jared. In reality, he was purchasing a gun so he could kill Griffin if he had to. It's a media frenzy when Griffin arrives on the scene but Michaela won't give up that easily. Ben and Mike make one last plea for him to change his mind because giving up the callings will result in his death either way. The government or some higher power will stop at no lengths to prevent him from revealing too much. When it doesn't look like that will work, Manifest takes a shocking turn. Griffin begins vomiting up water until he dies of what appears to be a drowning. Saanvi is able to get her hands on the autopsy and confirm that Griffin did drown on land. Speaking of Saanvi, Manifest continues to make her arc one of the most interesting. In the interview with EW, it was revealed her character wasn't supposed to have a large part. This explains why she wasn't used as much in the first half of the season. Building off her PTSD storyline from last week, Saanvi takes steps to go to therapy after a kind doctor gives her a recommendation. Unfortunately, that therapist winds up being the Major. What will she have in store for Saanvi next season? To make things even more complicated, Saanvi has to reveal to Ben that another doctor has discovered Cal's blood marker. Afraid of his son becoming a lab rat, Ben grabs some of Griffin's info before heading home. Olive and Grace spend most of the finale just trying to piece things together while bonding over their lack of callings. At home, Ben realizes that Griffin died after the exact amount of time he had been under the water. He begins calculating what the date would be for the passengers, but Olive already knows. Using the mythological figures from this whole season, she knows the time stamp is June 2, 2024. The three all cry, but Olive begs her parents not to tell Cal so he won't have to live like he's dying again. Sadly, Cal pops up to tearfully tell his family that he already knew. It's one of the more heartbreaking moments to see him admit he didn't know how to tell them. To make things worse, Grace is pregnant and it might not be Ben's baby. If it is, he could only have 5 more years with another kid before biting the dust again. Michaela spends a majority of the finale stubbornly trying to help Zeke no matter the cost. She speaks with his mother and reaffirms his story about returning from the dead. The woman is devastated how she turned away her son because she assumed he was high. Michaela encourages her to let him in some time because Zeke is bound to come back. Thanks to a flashback at the beginning of the hour, we see that Mike still believes her mother is watching over her. The Jamaica scene is a nice reminder about how the Stone family was before the incident. However, the most infuriating part of the finale comes down to the burgeoning love triangle. When Michaela once again ignores Jared and his proof about Zeke, he takes matters into his own hands. He storms into Mick's apartment and begins tearing the place apart while accusing Zeke of being high. Of course, he doesn't find anything but the unopened bottle of booze. Zeke offers to get his blood tested to prove his sobriety, but Jared demands he leaves before Mike gets home. The first half of this season was Michaela and Jared showcasing their strength as a partnership. However, these past few episodes have had him abandon his faith in her and turn into a jealous wreck. The first time he checked up on Zeke, it did make sense because he's a detective. However, Michaela is also a pretty decent detective herself. The way he continuously tries to destroy her opinion of Zeke, it just makes it seem like he doesn't trust her to take care of herself. Naturally, Jared's reasoning for wanting Zeke to leave is because he's the one who belongs with Michaela. Again, how is forcing him to leave going to help his relationship with Mike? Zeke makes a comment that maybe it's not meant to be, and the boys begin brawling. While Jared easily begins beating him, Zeke eventually gains the upper hand and pulls out his gun. He aims it at Jared before backing up and revealing that was the purchase he made. It doesn't matter though, because Jared jumps up and the two wrestle over control of the weapon. Michaela, spurred on by the calling to stop him, enters her apartment just as the gun fires. Who was shot? Manifest decides to leave that question unanswered for the time being, but the look at Mick's face does make it seem like she might be the one with the bullet. Since we know Zeke only bought the gun to save Mike, it will be pretty devastating if it ends up killing her. The expiration date is definitely the most intriguing cliffhanger the show introduces. Did Griffin die because he revealed the callings, or do they genuinely have an expiration date? If Flight 828 passengers had never died, how could this new wrinkle affect them? Not to mention, this kind of complicates things for Ben and Grace as well as Michaela. Would she go back to Jared when she thinks she'll have to leave him again in 5 years? With Zeke most likely only having 1 year left to live. That certainly puts a time constraint on a relationship with him. What did you think of the Manifest finale? Be sure to tell us in the comments section below.